a large-scale test, what we do is we recruit thousands of players for a customer. Obviously, you could do it with hundreds, but like generally, we see that these are like cases where it often refers like is to for online games or multiplayer games, games where you need like you want to have at least like 2,000 or several thousand people online to be testing the game and seeing how many people. Like you could do retention testing as well, where you want to see you do it for a week and you want to see how many people come back every day. We are just there to recruit people, to screen them, because even if you're recruiting 10,000 people, you probably have like certain genres in mind, age demographics, countries. So there's a lot of things that are involved there. So we are really only there on the recruitment and organization side of things. The test itself is run by the customer, because obviously it is tricky for a customer to recruit 5,000 people for a test. They want us to handle that and just take that worry away from them, so they can focus on the test itself and not have to worry that these are the right players, that these are foul players, and like do all the organization around that. But we can kind of handle all that. They can focus on the test.
Yeah, they can fully focus on their results and on the actual process of gathering actionable data from the participants of the test, and everything on the lead up to the test is that's where we come in basically. Which we use the word recruit, but under the word recruit, there's a lot of other things. Recruitment goes all the way from designing different ad campaigns and attractive marketing tactics to get users from X or Y regions or demographics interested in taking part. We then put them through a screener process, onboard them. We usually would then use communication services such as Discord and email, inform them, provide instructions, provide community, which is very important as well to maintain engagement of a very large player base for a large scale test. Moderation efforts as well, obviously as soon as you're talking about 1,000, 2,000 plus users in one virtual space, of course behavior becomes a concern, language, respect, etc. And we also handle that part. So although we use the word recruitment, it involves a lot of different things, which, as Robin said, is what allows the actual developers or publishers of the game to focus purely on their goals and on their objectives of the test that they're running, and not on any of the actual, stressful, time-consuming part of the test. One of the most common things we find when it comes to very large-scale tests, I'm talking about the largest scale test that we usually see, which can be upwards of anywhere from 10,000 to 30,000 users, is stress testing. So it's testing to see if the game's engine and servers can handle many concurrent players at the same time. Because of course, as any developer and publisher's wish is, when they release their multiplayer game, is that it will be a success, and their servers and their game engine will be bombarded by loads of fresh, new, excited players jumping in to try out their game. And obviously the last thing they want, which is a developer's worst nightmare if they're developing any form of multiplayer title, is for release date to come around, they open the gates and the whole game just breaks, crashes and burns. And there's not really any way of being able to predict or prepare for that other than stress testing, which is when we then jump in and we organize these very large scale tests for the developers, so that they can, as well, it's in the name, isn't it? Stress tested, so they can submit their engine and their servers to the level of stress that they anticipate at any given time of concurrent players, and see how their engine and their servers respond to that level of input simultaneously. That's one common way.
Like if you're testing like a new extraction shooter, you don't necessarily want like your starting Valley players in there, like what they think of it. You want to see what people who like shoot, and even then, like you have like differences where you can say like a bit broader, like people who like any sort of shooter is fine, or you go more narrow. We say like people who like only like Tarkov and Arc Raiders. So this in that regard, it's like as long as obviously with an alpha, if you want us to get 10,000 players, you need to have like a profile, obviously that's like reasonably broad. But yeah, closed alphas, it's just like obviously there's a very common practice to just see what players think of the game, and we can just handle like the side around that. We see retention testing where like especially in case of like multiplayer and live service games, you want to just like test for a week and see like how many players are coming back every day, how many players have played multiple times. So that's something that we see often as well.
Yeah, retention tests, as you're explaining there, like they're a very popular form of large scale tests as well. Where, we run the test over multiple days and we see what the percentage looks like of drop off, and then we via surveys and incentives try to gather data, actionable data on why are players dropping off, why did they lose interest when it reached the second or third day, and what can be changed to retain those players. It's also interesting how you brought up just now, Robin, about the different cohorts or player types that we work with, where we're running a closed alpha and we want to test it with various different player profiles. Just recently, just to give a small example, just recently we had a customer who ran a large scale test, and they focused on, so the game was a shooter, and the test, they had, I think, 2 or 3 different types of shooter player defined, and it was like, okay, we want, out of however many we were recruiting, 500, 600 users, we want 20% to be of shooter type A, players of Call of Duty, Battlefield, etc. Then we want 40% of shooter type B, which could be, as you just gave an example, Robin, of Tarkov and other more hardcore. Then you could also have a certain percentage of Battle Royale. But what was interesting with this client is they asked for a sort of a control cohort to see if their game could adopt naysayers of the genre. So they even asked us to recruit a percentage of the total audience to be haters of shooters, people who actually don't like shooters as a genre and don't play them. And they also wanted to recruit this audience, but I don't remember what percentage we aimed for. I think it was something like 10% of the audience was to be this control group, to see how naysayers of the shooter genre would react to this person shooter, and if there was any interesting insights that could be gathered from testing with people who are actually not destined to like their game. So we find all sorts of interesting different profiles and audiences and objectives when it comes to our clients. It all just depends on what they want to get out of the test, what they want to learn, what sort of data, what sort of changes do they think they might need to make to the game, and what sort of guided questions and testing will bring them towards the answers.
From the start, where we get like the briefing from the client, but first of all, it's always important to clarify with both sides what we need, because there's like obviously like tech backend things going on that might not have been thought of yet. Like we need to understand what we're dealing with, because these are like not like in a lot of like smaller scale playtests. They say like, oh, you play this for an hour, you get 30 euros. But obviously in this case, that's completely against the purpose of what the test often is trying to do. And also it just wouldn't be feasible to pay 5,000 people that kind of money, right? So that would make the playtest quite expensive. We need to have like the materials that we can show to players, like ideally like a video and like some key visuals that kind of show off. They allow us to show your game, and then from there on, from our side we host the landing page, and we can even like and that's like you see often you have like a website from the customer, and then we have like we can host like a subdomain like alpha dot whatever the game is .com, and we can just host that inside the main domain, and like there's obviously some things we need to communicate there with the client's IT team. But from there, we can host it, and we send them directly to via that subdomain. We send them to our pre-screeners. We handle the screening, so we have like a complex logic setup where we make sure that we automate everyone who's going to be approved and disapproved. And we can even also have some people in reserve, some people who might say like, okay, we don't really need more of this profile, like not reject them outright, because we might be able, if we have keys spare, for example, we can give them to these players. Yeah, from there and then obviously we also do then the key distribution as well. So like obviously the client has to give us the keys, and then we distribute them to the players with valid profiles. Yeah, we also handle obviously the communication. So we mainly use social media for that. So YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, recruit on different platforms.
Of course, there's one of the earliest, sort of going chronological order. Of course, there's as Robin was saying, we would start with like the first thing a user would see usually is an ad campaign, a campaign that is trying to recruit them into this test. And Robin, who runs these campaigns, can tell you that that's a lot that goes into that. Defining the profile, the sort of look, visuals, the identity that you're aiming for, what channels you want to advertise in, how to budget your adverts to make them as cost effective as possible, based on the dates, the data, the timeline you have for the recruitment process, etc. And then once the users click on the ad, if they're interested in taking part, they will then be passed on from Robin's hands to mine, because after that point they'll be sent through a screening process, which usually after a series of either long and extensive emails with the client, as in the developer of the game, or some in-depth video meetings or calls, or just meetings in general with them, for me and the team to be able to understand exactly what players they are looking for, what is the game profile essentially, what is the target demographic that they want to test with. And I will usually put together a screener, a survey that will be able to funnel and divide users into different cohorts and different priority levels. That will then allow us to tag them as valid, non-valid. Okay, they're part of the first cohort that we want to recruit, 70% of the players we want are of this type. Then we also want 10% of this type, 15% of this type, etc. And we'll put together a screener that does all of this categorizing and all of this screening process essentially. Put them through, and then after that, yes, we'll automate various comms campaigns with them, from email to WhatsApp messaging to text messages, in some very fringe case scenarios, even focus group calls, one-on-one interviews, phone calls, etc. Both for hype reasons and engagement reasons, to maintain them engaged on the days to week leading up to the test that they signed up for. And what we usually use for this is a Discord community. We'll put together various Discord servers with all of its channels and roles and permissions, bespoke designed for the specific needs and wants and security requirements of the game that we're testing. And then we'll prep all the communication via that Discord channel, from instructions to updates to announcements to rules, regulations. We'll distribute NDAs to make sure that the game remains secret and safe. It's called Gandalf, keep it secret, keep it safe. That's one of our main functions here at Antidote as well, is to guarantee a level of security, no matter how large scale the test becomes, which then of course also involves moderation, something we like to call leak hunting, where we'll put together like an action squad, where once actual, NDA protected material has been passed on to the users, we'll then scour the internet, from streaming platforms to forums to whatever, in hunt of users that have maybe just or might be trying to break their NDAs, and we will very quickly take legal cease and desist action against them to make sure that nothing is leaked, and everything is kept safe and protected. And then, of course, we also moderate, control behavior, control respect, clear communication, then, like guide the narrative to make sure, because, when it comes to the gaming community, we all know how quickly a narrative can get out of hand with, there's a snowball effect when it comes to video game discourse that can very quickly lead to some very problematic and very false narratives getting very quickly out of hand, which can make or break a game before it's even released.
Lastly, I guess, like in the final step of like when the playtest is actually happening, obviously we do actually provide moderation for the playtest as well, where like Antidote moderators will come in and just make sure the tests are going well, answering questions of people, obviously keeping the chat clean. Obviously, a dev doesn't want to look at the chat and see all kinds of horrible rhetoric. You're always going to have those kind of people, sadly, coming in every community. So, but then again, it's as the client wishes. We don't, like, some clients prefer to do their own moderation, and some are happy for us to do it, because obviously it's like a lot of intense activity during this time. So it's like, more than they normally are used to. So that we can do that. So yeah, generally obviously we do invite our whole community as well, but like in these kind of like very large playtests, then it also means that you bring a lot of people from the outside, and that's also good, right? You don't necessarily want a professional playtesting class. You want like organic players to come in and say, oh, that like game looks fun for me. So what I mostly handle is like the recruitment, like the communications with the outside world. Is like basically social media. Generally, what we do is like we try to go broad, and then if something doesn't work, we stop doing it. So like from like social media perspective, we generally use YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok. Although TikTok lately, we've seen that like TikTok has made a lot of changes to their system, so it's not as good anymore as it used to be. We have in the past used influencers as well, but obviously this kind of depends a little bit on whether or not how secretive the client wants to keep the project. Like if you're using an NDA, you don't want people to talk about it. You can't have people streaming it. We have a big project coming up. I can't say too much about it, but there will be like a very big influencer campaign as well with some of the biggest streamers in the world who are going to be recruited for that. Sometimes the client as well will have like a very public announcements to that as well, where they will be in like Gamescom coming up, and they'll have like playtest now. So there's we try to get from as many different sources as we can. Obviously, you see some sources like Instagram and YouTube are always like going to be like two of the biggest sources for us, because they're just like everyone uses them, and they have like good engagement in general. So that's where we see a lot of our players coming from. But yeah, we try to spread it out. We try to cast a wide net, and then try to bring in a lot of players.
My role at Antidote is panel manager, and what is a panel manager? Essentially means I manage the players themselves. If Robin manages the actual marketing and the actual campaign that we use to engage with and find the users. Once they are engaged, once they're hooked, once they're in, well, it's not physically, but you could say that Robin sort of passes them on to me, which is from that point onwards, as I said before, I design screeners and surveys to categorize and to screen users, first of all, make sure that they're valid for the playtest. If they are, I can then categorize them based on different criteria. As I was saying before, a lot of times these play tests, they want to test with, say, 4 different types of audience, 4 different types of player. These will often, just to give an example, these will often come with like code names, like Katrina, we want profile Katrina, we want profile Jackson, profile this. Katrina likes this game, that game, this game, she's this age, she works in this field, she lives in this city, blah, blah, blah. And and what was the other name? I said Jackson. He likes these games, lives here, works in this field, has these sort of feelings on these topics, etc., etc. I will create the funnels that will categorize these users, and then essentially keep a tabs control on how we're doing for recruitment speed. What our numbers are looking like as the campaign goes on, as the days pass by.
To be clear, we are GDPR compliant. So we're not just like saving all this data of people.
Yeah, exactly. Generally, we'll put together like control panels to keep tabs on this data as it comes in, so we can adapt accordingly. That's where Robin will come back into it, where I'll say to him, okay, we're running short on this profile of users. This one, I think we haven't, like, that's another part of my job, is forecasting based on certain things like no-show rates. No-show rates meaning people who sign up for the play test, join the Discord, are active, but then when push comes to shove and it's time to start testing, they're nowhere to be found.
Like, we can give them the key, but you're always going to have a percentage. And that's why what we used to recruit and what we used to estimate is like, okay, we have a number of players. So to play, you have a number of percentage of players who's going to get a key and not actually end up playing. And you're going to have a percentage of people who are going to sign up, but not actually claim their key. And so you have to kind of like calculate back from like that. And then sometimes you have like, obviously, then either better or worse, right? So always try to be safe, but it does sometimes mean that we do bring in more players than we need to. So you can't guarantee that, exactly 50% of players who have a key are going to play. That's like, you never know.
It's much like the weather. You can't predict the weather, but you can forecast it. We forecast how many users we need to recruit in order to guarantee the numbers that our customer, in this case the developer or publisher of the game, want. Just to give an example, we had one customer who wanted 400 UK testers. Okay, so we needed to make estimates on, okay, if they want 400, how many do we actually need to recruit to be in the Discord, to redeem the game key, to pass the screener, in what percentages based on the different cohorts that the user is looking to test with, etc. And then for that test, we take everything into account to do all these estimates. For example, the one I'm referring to, it's a UK-based test, and it was the day after St. Patrick's Day. So of course, this was a factor we had to take into mind, and we had to do research into social habits.
Originally, I wanted to do it on St. Patrick's Day, and we were like, maybe one day later.
Yeah. Then it was the question of, okay, one day after St. Patrick's Day, does that mean that the St. Patrick's hangovers is going to mean a higher attendance rate or a lower attendance rate? Could be higher because it means people are sitting at home with a hangover, haven't gone to work, and they might rather just sit at home and chill playing a game on their computer rather than go out and do something. Could be lower because maybe people are put off because they have a headache from St. Patrick's shenanigans. So these are the things we need to take into account and research, and taking all sorts of factors from social psychology to regional cultures and habits, and sort of make informed forecasting based on these numbers to know how many numbers by the time the day of the testing arrives we are going to need in order to guarantee the numbers that the client wants to see testing the game. So that's where we build various control panels, where we will make these predictions. We will keep tabs on how recruitment is going, and then Robin will adapt the marketing campaign accordingly to push the numbers towards the ones we're aiming for. Essentially what I handle on my end is that managing the player experience once they're already in our funnel, essentially. And also making sure they're informed, making sure they have all of their clear instructions, make sure all of the data the data they're receiving, the playtest details, specifically, the dates, the times, what they need to do in the playtest, what they can expect afterwards, what sort of rewards are we looking at? Is it a giveaway? Is it going to be an individual gift card for every participant? All of that I need to, make sure is clear, putting together an FAQ, putting together terms and conditions for the raffle giveaway that we run after the playtest is over. All of those sort of things, with, of course, support from all of our wonderful team. This is essentially what Robin and I do.
onboarding people is like you need to make it as frictionless as possible. You need people, like obviously we need them to do a pre-screener, but you need that to make the as less annoying as possible, less steps, less things that they manually have to do. If you're forcing people, because most people look at things on their phone and they will sign up on things on their phone. If you make people go to their PC to do something, you've already lost them. Right. So try to make it as seamless as possible, like no unnecessary signups, just like automatic. Like if you fill in your email in the place, make sure they never are asked for the same question twice. Like give them buttons to directly go to Discord. To not like, have like, oh, you have to go here and that. And, if you have someone's Steam data, if their Steam account is linked, well, then you can see that they are a valid player. So, but like, you can't ask someone for, well, you can, but it's very painful to ask someone for literal proof that they have like a certain amount of hours in games. So that has a lot of friction. So you want to avoid that by just automatically taking that data from Steam, for example. So that's how we try to avoid friction. Just having clean buttons everywhere. Don't make people sign up to a lot of things. Don't make the process complicated. Make it as frictionless as possible while still meeting the needs that the client has for security.
It essentially comes down to automating as much as possible so there's no bottlenecks, because the days of yesteryear, by which I mean 3-4 years ago, when our tools were a bit more limited, when our experience was obviously not what it is now, multiple years into the process. Of course, there was a lot more manual validation, which would lead to a bottleneck, what I mean by that is the user would hit a point in the player journey from ad campaign to doing the playtest, where they would hit a wall that would say, okay, now wait there, we'll let you know in 24 hours if you could go through to the next step of the process. This, of course, is a big no-no. Sometimes it's unavoidable, I will say. Just right now, actually, Robin and me are currently running a campaign which, due to the specific needs of this campaign, require a manual review of screener responses before actually being able to put anyone through to any final process or a final step. So sometimes the places will require that based on its specific needs, but more often than not, it's best to avoid these as much as possible, as Robin said, because it's best to be completely frictionless in this process. If the user can go straight from the ad campaign to the Discord with no stops, no repeated information, just click, 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 I'm in, I have all the information I need, I'm in the Discord community, I can now talk to fellow playtesters, get hyped, get ready, and in whatever 4 or 5 days the scheduled playtest will happen, and I have everything I need. Just jump in, do it, get my reward, get out.